Hello and welcome to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day, so we are on the Zooms with Ken Slack. He is communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. So that everyone is aware, we are recording on a Monday, but we are not recording on the Monday that you're listening. We're recording on what I'm going to call Tornado Monday, Ken Slack, because we are sitting here on a Zoom at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We've been in a tornado watch all day today. Some of the school systems closed in case a tornado shows itself. But as we're sitting here, for me in Frederick County, I've just seen a little bit of rain this morning. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this ends up being a bust.
I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. We haven't seen a whole lot of activity here in Stanton either. We are just one of 9 districts, and so sometimes we share messaging with other parts of the state. And because a lot of times folks, whether it's a daily commute or special trip, they may be heading into where the storm could even be worse, or storms in this case. But certainly getting into that time of the year where, although it's still March, it almost seems like we're talking about summer storms, like that July, August stuff.
It prompted me right before we started recording to ask you, when we're told as residents to bring anything in that might blow away, secure our trash cans, things along those lines. Do you guys have to do that sort of thing on job sites, particularly the road work and bridge work that you're doing?
Sure. And by we, in this case, we're probably mostly talking about VDOT contractors that might be doing some widening project in the Strasburg area on 81 or some of the other projects around our district. There are some materials that can get picked up and blown away by the winds. Our construction teams reach out to the contractors to make sure they're aware of the forecast and secure anything. Could be anything from traffic barrels to some tarps and even some of the silt fencing that helps border some of the construction jobs. So they'll take an extra look because they don't want to lose that stuff either, because those are materials that they spend money on. Not to mention they're working so close to traffic. If something blows away, that could be a potential hazard.
Yeah, I love those orange barrels because, of course, they're orange, but I don't think I'd love one rolling in front of my car when I'm cruising down 81. Not that I cruise down 81, but even still.
Yeah, and most of the jobs that we have on 81 right now, the Strasburg, Stanton, Weir's Cave, those work zones for the most part are separated from traffic by concrete barriers. Those are not going to blow away in the wind. But near the construction access points, we might have some barrels as they're going in and out, because those sometimes do need to be shifted from time to time. Those barrels are plastic, but they have the really heavy duty rubber bases that attach to the bottom of them. They're heavier than they look, but certainly they can get blown over or perhaps get clipped by a vehicle. And then once they're on their side, then it's a little bit easier for them to get moved around.
So, what is the status now of southbound 81 at Strasburg where you're doing the widening? How far have you gotten? Are you ahead of schedule, behind schedule? Give me some updates.
Yeah, we are on schedule with that project about a third of the way through, and we're still on target for completion in the fall of 2028. So, yeah, still a little over 2 years away, 2.5 years, something like that. Just over the last few weeks, folks driving through, especially at night, might have seen the contractors putting some of those massive steel beams in place for a new section of the new bridge over Cedar Creek, right there at the Shenandoah Warren County line. We are replacing that southbound bridge, and the beams are in place now for phase 1 of that. Coming up soon, the crews will be putting down the decking surface and pouring the concrete for that, and then shifting traffic onto that portion of the bridge so that they can build the second half of it. So probably looking at a traffic shift in late summer, maybe somewhere around the August range. Those are always nice milestones, mini benchmarks as people see progress on these projects.
And I have to say, I haven't seen a lot of accidents necessarily through that work zone. It seems like people are paying attention as they come through that section of 81.
Well, and it might very well be the fact that it is a work zone. There was a slowdown in the speed limit going through there just because it is a very congested portion of 81 right there just south of where I-66 comes in, and plus a couple of exits close together where all that business and industry is in the Strasburg area. And that left-hand exit going from westbound 66 onto southbound 81, a lot of just different things that can make it challenging for drivers in that portion of the interstate. We did have the project that finished up about a year and a half ago, I think it was, that extended the merge lane coming off of 66. Now we're going from that point further south with the widening, but perhaps all the construction signs, maybe that slows people down a little bit. It's supposed to, but unfortunately we see many times where it doesn't. But we certainly have been pleased so far at how that project has progressed, and we've seen relatively few accidents. I always feel like I need to knock on wood when I say things like that, though. But we certainly appreciate when folks are patient and attentive when they're going through a work zone because there are just so many different things that are potentially out there to see besides the road in front of you and a little bit tighter through there because of the shoulder closure. So be very cautious as you're going through there and just be patient because we are making good progress. And when it's all finished, you're going to be like, I forgot what it was like before, but this is nice now.
And that is a true fact because you and I have talked about this before with those bridges in Front Royal. I did not think they were ever going to finish. And within 2 weeks of them being done, I didn't even remember how terrible it was. You just think, oh, this is a great road and it's smooth sailing.
And we hope that's the case for Strasburg. We sometimes get questions like, why not widen the whole interstate? Well, none of us can afford to do that. We are doing it a piece at a time, tackling the areas, the hot spots, if you will, where the improvements are needed most. We do have another round of projects, probably a decade down the road. But once we're finished with Strasburg and Harrisonburg and Winchester, there will be more improvements coming. And in some cases, they will be contiguous, I guess you'd say, where we're building off of the other improvements. And sometimes we've got an improvement here and one here, and we're going to be able to bridge those gaps. So we're getting there, and it will take me past my retirement for sure. But these are improvements that I think are going to be much appreciated by a lot of the folks that drive this corridor.
We talked a little bit about that in one of our shows. You always have to, with every project that you're doing, you're also looking into the future so that if you think you might have to do something in that area in 10 years, you want to do whatever you can now to facilitate that then. So none of these projects usually are a one and done. You're still having to look into the future for potential improvements to the improvements you're making.
It's absolutely true. And I certainly think people would expect that of us because we are spending millions and sometimes tens of millions of taxpayer dollars. And so it doesn't make sense to do an improvement somewhere and then have to tear up pavement or redo something because you didn't plan properly for the future. I think a good example of that's coming soon in the Winchester area. We're probably a couple of years away from construction up there, but we're also looking at some needed improvements that are funded by Smart Scale at the exit 317 interchange. They're going to be reconfiguring that, moving one of the ramps, putting in a diverging diamond interchange. Those projects were originally not supposed to happen at the same time, but we spent a lot of time sitting down and looking at the plans and looking at the progression of the engineering and all the design work that takes place and looking at any way we could make this happen where we could do these together because it makes a lot more sense if we can bundle those projects. And that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bundling under what we call a design build contract, where a design build team comes in a little bit earlier in the process, finishes up the design, takes it through right away in construction. And of course, we keep a close eye on all that, but it sometimes can help things move along a little bit quicker, but also ensures that adjacent improvements are coordinated properly.
When you talk about congestion, that is an incredibly congested area in Winchester. You've got 81, you've got 522, you've got 50, all of these places converging right there. I would appreciate you doing it all in one fell swoop rather than let's do part of it now and work on it for 2 years, give it 6 months or a year break, and then come back and do another 2 years. So I think that's the smartest option all the way around.
But I should mention a caveat. We did still need to divide Winchester into sort of northern and southern segments because if you try to bundle all these things together, it was a little bit too much going on. So we have sort of the northern half that'll be going from a little bit south of the exit 317, about 2 miles worth of widening on the interstate, replacement of several bridges, I think 6 bridges in that project, plus the improvements there at the interchange. And then probably a year or two later, be working on the south section, basically from the 317 and going down to about the 312-mile marker. So we do still have a couple different projects, but rest assured, they're going to be coordinated very closely and they're going to avoid those conflicts.
Let's take a break. When we come back, it is pothole season. And I always have to keep myself from saying it the way they did in that Geico commercial years ago. It's a pothole. Can we talk about what that looks like from the VDOT perspective in the next segment?
Absolutely. We'll be ready.
We're on the Zooms today with Ken Slack. He is the communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We're going to talk potholes and rail trails when we come back in just a couple of minutes.
This Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. She doesn't know that yet. All she knows is that she went to justserve.org and volunteered an hour of her time. Browsing through dozens of service opportunities in her community, April decided to spend her Tuesday evening serving dinner to mothers and their children at a transitional house. She doesn't know she'll be serving a particular mother and daughter who will be spending their first night in this home. April doesn't know that the hot meal she'll serve is the first this mother and daughter will have had in a week, or that the simple smile she'll offer as she serves them will help them realize that things are going to be all right. Which is why this Tuesday, April Davis will change the world. See the difference you can make. Sign up for service opportunities in your community. Visit justserve.org.
Welcome back to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. It is VDOT Day, so we are on the Zooms with Ken Slack. Ken is the communications specialist for the Stanton district of VDOT. We talked in the first segment about the southbound widening of 81 there at Strasburg. Got a progress report on that, but it hadn't even occurred to me. And when we first got on the Zooms and I said, so what are we talking about today? And you said, well, it is pothole season. I did not realize it was pothole season, but I guess you're much closer to that than I am.
Yeah, and traditionally we call pothole season, it's the late winter and into the early spring. And the reason for that is, and maybe a way to imagine it, get a plastic water bottle. Don't do this with glass, but fill a plastic water bottle all the way to the top, put the cap on it, and put it in your freezer. When it freezes, that bottle is going to expand. And that's what happens when any kind of water that seeps in through the asphalt. Now, asphalt will naturally allow some water to get through, especially if there are any kind of cracks and the moisture gets underneath the asphalt. We have these cycles like we have in pothole season this time of year, freeze and thaw, freeze and thaw. That's where we have the expanding and the contracting underneath the asphalt. And over time, it can make that surface heave a little bit and the cracks get a little bigger. Traffic drives over it and causes little pieces of it to break off. And that cycle, as it continues, eventually creates a pothole. Sometimes they're very small by the time we get to them, and sometimes they form relatively rapidly and we get out there as quick as we can. But we do rely, Janet, on folks reaching out to us and letting us know, because we're certainly riding the roads and checking, but sometimes the motorists are the first ones they'll certainly let us know.
Do you have a pothole hotline?
We have a hotline. It's not just for potholes. This is just a wonderful plug for our customer service center. You can call 800-4ROAD, FORROAD. But we do a lot of this now online. Pretty much any internet search, just type in my VDOT and it'll go right there. It's a very easy and it's mobile friendly as well. You can report a pothole. There might be a drainage issue somewhere. Maybe there's sight distance or a sign that's been knocked over and needs to be anything like that. During storms, hey, I want to report a tree branch that's blocking part of the roadways. But certainly things like potholes are among the potential hazards that we ask for folks to just reach out and let us know. Be specific about where it is. And it goes to a customer service center, but this is not AI. These are real people that get this information and they turn around and assign it to the nearest area headquarters. And then it creates a work order so that it will get taken care of at some point. It may not be as fast as you'd like all the time, but it will get done. And we certainly try to respond to these potholes before they become something even worse.
Does the salt and the brine and the treatment from winter weather impact potholes? Does it make them worse or create them, or is it really just the temperatures and the water?
It's mostly the water and the temperatures and the freezing and the thawing and the traffic, but we can't take traffic off our roads. The salts do create some issues with our bridges, and that's why we try to minimize the seams in our bridges. A good example of that, you mentioned when we were talking a little while ago about that big bridge there at Front Royal that was finished back in, I think it was 2017, we finished that over the South Fork Shenandoah River. That sucker's 1,900 feet long, and it is the longest jointless structure in the Commonwealth of Virginia, which
What?
it's a fun thing for us to say, but the reason that's important is when you don't have seams, there's nowhere for those salts and the moisture to get in there and cause corrosion and shorten the life of a bridge. So the fact that it's a continuous pour across that, what is that, about a third of a mile long bridge will certainly help that thing last for the better part of a century.
Bridges are typically done with concrete, not asphalt, and concrete doesn't like salt all that much. I know as someone who grew up with a father who was a concrete contractor, I know about expansion joints and all of the things that also lends itself to not being friendly.
Yeah, concrete, and my front porch doesn't like it either. I don't put salt on the front porch anymore because it does over time it eats away. So I actually scoop gravel out of the driveway, put it on the steps and the sidewalk. When it's finished, I sweep it back off and put it back in the driveway. It does just as good a job and it doesn't eat anything up.
It does seem like once you've hit a pothole somewhere and you've reported it and you guys come out and you fix it, that pothole seems to come back in the same spot. At what point do you have to rip out the whole section of road and redo the whole section versus just trying to fill the pothole that originally started the whole mess?
It depends on a few things. Now, sometimes we see more potholes like in a section of road that might be a little bit depressed. And so there's more moisture underneath that road there in the hollers, as you might say. Depending on the temperatures, the plant mix that we put down into, it's sort of a VDOT term for the patching mix that we use to fill the potholes. There's hot mix, cold mix, and warm mix. There's a whole science behind this. But certain times of year, we have to use a cold mix asphalt, and it does not last quite as long as the original paving that we think of. That's the hot mix stuff that everybody likes to see, but it's something that can be put in any season, and it will be a temporary patch. If we see them coming back, or there's a bunch of them in this area, then then we can do more of the rehab of that portion of the asphalt. But most of the patching that we do on potholes is intended to be temporary.
Before we wrap up, let's talk for a minute about the rail trail. I told you before we got started that I don't know nearly as much about that project as I probably should. I should probably get somebody from some organization to come and explain it all to me. But VDOT has a role in that whole process of rail with trail, trail, no rail, all of the things. How in the world did y'all get mixed up in all this?
We were tasked at the state level of conducting the assessment. You might remember that there was a rail to trail study that was done several years ago. And then in more recent years, the General Assembly put some money aside for the study, a feasibility study, and that included the possibility of rail with trail. So for the uninitiated, what we're talking about is a nearly 50-mile stretch of a former Norfolk Southern rail line that goes from the town of Broadway in northern Rockingham County through Mount Jackson and Strasburg and all the way up the Shenandoah Valley, and then curves over and come to a stop in downtown Front Royal. We have this unused rail line. And so the idea behind this was to look at the feasibility of removing the rails and turning it into a trail, or possibly having a recreational multi-use actually trail next to the rail line, and being able to keep that rail line in case there is an operator in the future that wants to be able to use that either for freight or for excursions, or both. The rail with trail assessment is going on, has been for more than a year now. We are going to be having a series of in-person public meetings in April. We're going to be hitting Woodstock, Timberville, and Front Royal, give folks a chance to we'll see a brief presentation about the study up to this point, and to have some one-on-one open house time to take a look at all the display boards, ask any questions, and make some comments. And around the same time, we haven't quite finished it yet, but in early April, be on the lookout for an online survey as well. So we're looking for public input either in person or through that online survey. And then all of this will be mixed in with all the technical information as part of the final report that we'll turn over to the Commonwealth Transportation Board.
And those public meetings are great for somebody like me who has heard of it, knows a little bit about it, but doesn't really understand how it may or may not impact me or my community. Coming to those public meetings and getting that information so that you can then give VDOT your informed opinion or thoughts on that project is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's true whether we're talking about rail with trail assessment or a widening project on the interstate or a bridge replacement or anything that could potentially impact either property owners or commuters or anybody who uses a particular section of roadway. That's why we reach out. We try to do it in different ways: in-person meetings, online surveys, try to get the word out through social media, give folks a chance to go on a website and answer some questions there. So there's all kinds of ways to reach folks nowadays. And we try to check all those boxes and give folks an opportunity to weigh in on these projects, and simply sometimes to get their questions answered. Does this impact me? Do they need to buy my piece of my property for right of way or a construction easement? Am I still going to be able to make a left turn there or not? So there's all kinds of questions we get from folks about all kinds of projects. And so we do the best we can to answer them.
I feel like I should just have the VDOT website as my homepage on my browser because I
You
am
don't
up and
already?
down the no, I don't. I'm sorry. I've just given away my secret. No, it isn't. But I am up and down both ends of the Shenandoah Valley from Winchester to Mount Jackson. And there are things that probably impact me that I should be paying attention to on your website.
I'm, I do have to laugh though that when you say both ends of the Shenandoah Valley being Winchester and Mount Jackson, you do know that we have stuff that's south of Mount Jackson, right? I just,
Yeah,
yeah,
I do get
our
to
district.
Newmarket occasionally.
Okay. Wow, that's the deep south right there. Now we cover and just our district alone has 11 counties. We go down to about the Natural Bridge area, which is another 100 miles south of where you're talking about. And then we have some of our friends in the Salem and Bristol districts, but 81, believe it or not, just in Virginia alone runs 325 miles. So it's a huge responsibility, and that's just one interstate. Obviously, we keep up all kinds of other roads as well.
Every time you tell me how long 81 is in Virginia, it boggles my mind. And you've told me that a dozen times, and I'm still like, oh my gosh, that seems like a lot.
I just saw this last week as I saw a social media post about the longest and shortest interstates in the US. And so I was curious, how long is 81? It's about 855 miles, goes roughly from Knoxville, Tennessee, Sevierville, somewhere down in eastern Tennessee, goes up into Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York. But Virginia easily has the biggest portion of it, 325 miles.
I did not know until my kid moved to Scranton, and on his first trip home, I'm like, "How do you get home? What roads do you take?" And he goes, "Well, I take 81 for most of it." And I literally said out loud, "There's an 81 in Pennsylvania." I thought it was our little Virginia road. So there you go.
It's time for you to take some more road trips, Janet.
I know, right? I would if I could have the road all to myself, but people are crazy out there, and I don't want to be on those highways with some of these other people.
I'm just going to leave that one alone.
Yeah, no comment from VDOT on that
No.
one. But people can go to your website and everything is on there. There are so many resources, project pages, all of that sort of stuff.
All kinds of stuff. It doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but it's vdot.virginia.gov. Internet search, if you just type in VDOT, you'll find our website pretty easily. There's obviously a link to the 511 Virginia, which is great for real-time traffic and even weather information. You can see where backups, construction zones along the major roadways, traffic cameras. That's just 511. And on the main VDOT website, all kinds of travel information, including what we call our project pages, where you can get all the information you need about specific traffic studies on ongoing construction projects, ones coming up in the near future. Wow, all kinds of stuff that we have on there on the website. Our news releases go up there as well. We spend quite a bit of time trying to keep that website engaging and informative and helpful. So even if you don't make it your homepage, at least make it one of your bookmarks. There's good stuff there.
I will maybe go make it my homepage. Probably not. And why should I? Because I have access to you. We talk every couple of months, so you're my homepage, Ken Slack.
I guess that's a privilege, but it feels like a bit of a burden as well. But at least consider making it a bookmark so that you don't have to wait for the next conversation.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time today, my friend. I hope that we get through the rest of today and the weather is stagnant. How about that?
Hanging in there. The wind's picking up, but it's not too bad yet.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, a few minutes after noon, so meet me here then.